high glycemic? Well, if you look here, there's a white bun and there's white potatoes, highly cooked. And so you do have a lot of carbohydrate there, and it's a very refined carbohydrate. And so it is a very high glycemic load meal. And we have our colas and our pop, soda, cookies, sweet rolls, white flour, white pasta, white potatoes. And the more you cook white potatoes, the higher the glycemic index. White bread and white rice. On the other hand, in contrast, we have the low glycemic index foods. And these include things like tofu and olives and vegetables, avocados, sprouts, nuts, peas. Here we have beans and fruit and brown rice and bread and oatmeal. I thought diabetics couldn't eat fruit. Well, fruit, if eaten fresh, whole, without being processed, has lots of vitamins and minerals and phytochemicals that are very helpful. Plus, it has a lot of fiber. And the fiber slows the rate at which sugar enters the system. Now, I'm not suggesting that diabetics become fruitarians, but on the other hand, fruit isn't something you necessarily have to avoid. In fact, it's an important part of a healthy diet. What are the consequences of high blood sugar? Well, if your blood sugar goes up, your triglycerides go up. Wait. I thought triglycerides were like fat, and sugar is like carbohydrate. How come carbohydrate makes my fats go up? Well, your body, believe it or not, does not have a little box anywhere to store sugar cubes. It has no way of storing sugar. And so in order to store the sugar, it needs to make it into a form that is storable. And so it makes it into fats, triglycerides. Proteins are glycated. Oh, what's that mean? Glycated means sugar-coated. Oh, sugar-coated. Well, that's not necessarily good when it's your blood cells and your blood vessels and your nerves and your tendons and so forth. You don't want to be sugar-coated. And then high blood sugar is chased by high insulin levels. The insulin goes up. Well, believe it or not, insulin is not just for putting sugar in the cells. Insulin is also a growth factor. It makes things grow. It makes all kinds of things grow. But because it makes things grow, it needs building blocks to build things. And one of those building blocks for cell walls is cholesterol. So high insulin makes high cholesterol. And then it also raises the blood pressure so everybody will get to work. And then it will make tumors start growing as well. Breast tissue that's tumorous, breast tumors, have about twice the number of insulin receptors as regular breast tissue. This is dangerous. And then it also increases central obesity. Obesity around your middle with more organ fat, visceral fat. Another problem with eating too much sugar is its effect on your white blood cells. Number of bacteria eaten by white blood cells in 12 hours. Notice if you're eating no sugar, and you're drinking just water, then each white cell can eat 14 bacteria. On the other hand, if you're drinking one soda, which has 12 teaspoons of sugar, each white cell can only eat 5.5 bacteria. If you're eating 24 teaspoons, 2 sodas, then each white cell can only eat 1 bacteria. And most Americans are eating about 52 teaspoons of sugar every day. And since none of you are eating that much, we know somebody else is eating way more than their share. Let's look at oranges versus orange juice for a minute. Notice that here I have time across the bottom. Up here I have blood sugar. If you drink orange juice, we're talking commercial orange juice, you buy it in the store, orange juice that has been pasteurized. What's pasteurized mean? They've heated it up. They're killing bacteria so that you can enjoy it longer. When they pasteurize it, heat it up, it breaks down complex sugars and starches into simple sugars and starches. And when it does that, it makes it a much higher glycemic index food. It makes it very little different from pop, actually, in its effect on your body. And so when you drink that orange juice, your blood sugar goes up way high, way up here. And then it doesn't stay up long. It comes crashing down to the ground. Whoa, I'm feeling so faint. I better have another orange juice. And so people drink another orange juice, get another spike of blood sugar, and then another fall into the basement. On the other hand, when they eat an orange instead of the orange juice, you can see that the blood sugar comes up more slowly. And it stays up a lot longer. And then it does not come crashing down like it did when you drank the juice. That's a big difference. That's a major difference. Let's look at this over a whole day. Similar graph, concentration of blood glucose over here. Over here's time. This is our danger zone. You don't want to go too low on your blood sugar. You'll pass out. I could have put a danger zone up here as well, because you don't want to go too high either. But notice the insulin is in red, the glucose is in green. Let's start out the morning with a refined cereal breakfast like that, those cornflakes and milk I talked about earlier with a glycemic index of 93. Cornflakes and milk, up goes the sugar just like that, and then down it goes into the basement. Because the insulin came shooting up because it thought there was an emergency. All that sugar pumping into the system in a hurry. Up goes the insulin and down goes the sugar. Oh man, I'm so faint this morning. Boy, is it about break time. I wish we could take a break now. What time is it? Oh, 10 o'clock. Okay, good. What can we have for break? Coffee and donuts. All right, up goes the sugar, way high. Up goes the insulin, down goes the sugar, way into the danger zone. Oh, I'm really feeling tired and faint now. It must be about lunchtime. What's for lunch? Oh, high protein lunch, but it's like a hot dog and a bun, and the bun is just refined carbohydrate, so the sugar doesn't go up so high, but the insulin comes up and down goes the sugar because it's not very well sustained. You can chase this thing all day long, and most people do. So what do they tell diabetics? Just eat many little meals all day long, and pretty soon all these peaks will start to coalesce because it's just going to be a sawtooth of all these little meals. Well, does that work? Well, it sort of works because, yes, you do get all the peaks to sit together, but there's something you need to understand about your stomach. Your stomach is very similar to a washing machine. A washing machine? Yes. How so? Well, when you go and put clothes into a washing machine, thump, shut the lid, thump, oh, forgot the soap, thump, thunk, turn the dial, push it. It starts to fill with water. You're happy it's going to be done in about an hour, and so you head up. Home comes Junior, home from football practice. He's got to have his jersey tomorrow. He takes all his clothes off. He comes to the washing machine. He throws his dirty clothes in there, and it's in the rinse cycle. Oh, no, Junior, you can't do that. Start over again. Open the lid, thunk. Put in some soap. Close the lid, thunk. Start all over again. Don't you ever do that again, Junior. You got to wait till it's through. And that is exactly what your stomach does every time you add more food to it before it was through with its cycle. They've done numerous studies on pills. They want to see how long it takes the pill to get out of the stomach. And in these studies, they'll give a person a few pills before breakfast. If the person eats breakfast, eats a mid-morning snack, eats lunch, eats a mid-afternoon snack, and eats supper, and then they look in the stomach, there will still be pills there from breakfast and some breakfast, because they've just been jamming the machinery all day long. What's more, if you eat 3 meals a day instead of 2, your risk of cancer goes up by 70%. If you eat 4 meals a day instead of 3, it goes up by 90%. And each additional snack time during the day raises the risk of colon cancer another 60%. So this is a very dangerous way to fix diabetes. On the other hand, we're going to change the scenario. We're going to start the day off with a whole grain, unrefined breakfast. Oh, like that oatmeal that we showed in that chart earlier. Oatmeal. And so we start off the day. The scenario's changed. Now, just like the orange, instead of the orange juice, the blood sugar comes up slowly, and then it goes down slowly. The insulin comes up slowly, and then it goes down slowly. But we know somewhere in here we're going to eat lunch, and so we have a fresh vegetable lunch, and up goes the sugar slowly, and up goes the insulin slowly, and down comes the sugar slowly. That is the cure one of the parts of the cure for diabetes. Changing the type of food we eat and how often we eat. Did you know that sugar clogs the system, but sugar is what the cells like to run on? Really? Yeah. That's their favorite food. Then why is it such a problem? If it goes too high, it tends to start sticking to things. For example, here's a blood vessel. I've chopped it on end so you can see down the inside of it. If you take that blood vessel and you add some sugar to it, I've made that blue for illustration, then the sugar starts to coat the inside of the blood vessel. As it coats the inside of the blood vessel, it gets thicker and thicker, more sugar and more coating until you have a thick wall of sugar. Well, that's no good. If I have a thick wall of sugar there, I'm going to be in trouble. You sure are. And here's a blood cell. And I'm looking down a blood vessel here. Notice that the sugar, I've put in blue again, is coating the outside of the cell. We call this hemoglobin A1C. This is a test we use in the hospital, hemoglobin A1C, to see how much sugar you have stuck to your proteins. Here's a high hemoglobin A1C, lots of sugar stuck to the outside of the cell. Well, let's put the two together now. Here is the blood vessel with blood going down the middle and lots of sugar around the outside. Here's tissue on the outside, like the diabetic's big toe. Well, you know, a lot of diabetics don't have big toes. I mean, they were born with them, but they got removed somewhere along the line. Well, we'll come back to that. Here is the blood vessel wall. Here's the sugar coating. Here is the hemoglobin A1C. We've got a problem. We can't get nutrition out here to the tissue. We can't get oxygen out here to the tissue. We can't get waste products from the tissue back into the bloodstream. And so we end up with a major problem. So the diabetic goes walking through the house. They step on a needle they didn't know that Aunt Betty left there. The needle goes into the big toe, all the way to the bone. Finally, they discover it and pull it out after the infection is starting all the way to the bone. But because they have this sugar coating inside the blood vessel and the sugar coating on the cells, they can't get white cells out there to clean up the infection. They can't get oxygen out there to help the body fight the infection. They end up with an infected toe that can't stop. And so we end up taking off those toes. Hemoglobin A1C is our way of measuring this problem. It predicts the risk of heart disease, death from heart attack, all kinds of mortality for people with or without diabetes. It indicates the average blood sugar over the last 3 months. And if it goes up to 7, we use that as another indication of diabetes. Well, some people have wondered how big a difference this makes. Well, if you have a 1% increase in hemoglobin A1C, glycated hemoglobin, then you have a 40% increase in mortality from heart disease. Your risk of dying goes up dramatically with an increase in this hemoglobin A1C. What about non-diabetics? Some of you are sitting here and saying, boy, I'm so glad I'm not a diabetic. Boy, I'm sure glad that the diabetics are listening to this. But if you are eating like a diabetic, you could end up dying like a diabetic even though your blood sugars never go out of the range of normal. For example, here they did a study. They discovered that 70% of non-diabetics over the age of 45 have a hemoglobin A1C that's too high. It's over 5. Wow, that's no good. 70% of the population? That's a lot of people. And so they estimate that 80% of excess mortality due to blood sugar elevations is in non-diabetics. Wow, that's a bit scary. On the other hand, there's some good news. For 1% reduction in hemoglobin A1C, you have a 17% reduction in risk of stroke, 18% reduction in risk of heart attack, 25% reduction in risk of diabetic deaths, and a 30% reduction in risk of retinopathy, that's the eyes, kidney disease, and amputations. So there is a benefit from lowering your hemoglobin A1C. Well, how would I know if I had diabetes? Could I have diabetes? Well, low energy, that could be an indication. Fatigue, tired all the time, extreme thirst, always going for water, frequent urination, that could be it, blurred vision, could I have diabetes, irritability, weight changes, up or down, dramatic, numbness or tingling in the hands or feet, frequent infections. What about extreme hunger, bruises and cuts that are slow to heal, nausea, vomiting, dehydration, and reduced consciousness level? That's a bit drastic. Well, I was in the ER one day. I was working on somebody with a broken wrist. Next to me, the ER doc had somebody in the stall, and they were busily trying to wake him up. Hey, wake up! Hey, wake up! Hey, wake up! Are you diabetic? Did you know your blood sugar was 300? Oh, no, me. No, I'm not a diabetic. Oh, where am I? And that's not the way to discover that you are a diabetic. But that's the way many people find out they are diabetics. By then, complications are well on their way. How did we used to treat diabetes? What are the treatments? Well, it's interesting. Here I have a statue of Hippocrates. He's the one that said, "Let food be thy medicine, and medicine thy food." Well, that's a pretty good saying. There's a lot of practicality to that. In the year 1000 AD, Greek physicians recommended horseback riding to reduce excessive urination. Well, I don't know if it worked or not, but it's hard to find a good horse these days. Besides, the Humane Society is very active. In the 1800s, bleeding, blistering, and doping were common. Can you think of an early American, famous American that was bled to death? Yes, George Washington. And he probably had the flu or something, and after the third set of physicians came through to ply him with their healing arts, he was no longer responding. Well, you know, all bleeding eventually stops. In 1915, Sir William Osler of Johns Hopkins University recommended opium. Well, if we can't fix them, at least we can keep them happy. Here's a study in the New England Journal of Medicine comparing placebo, medication, and lifestyle in stopping diabetes in people who are pre-diabetic. They took a whole group of people who had blood sugars that were going a little too high but not high enough to be diabetic, and they put them in three groups. One group had nothing done to them, one group got medications, and another group got lifestyle changes. Notice that the medicine group reduced the incidence of diabetes by 31%. Well, that's good. But notice that the group that got lifestyle changes saw a 58% reduction in the incidence of diabetes. The message: lifestyle changes are a much stronger medical intervention than pills. Well, it makes sense. Pills didn't cause the diabetes in the first place. It was lifestyle. What were the lifestyle changes? They included losing weight, 7% of your weight. They included exercising daily, a goal of 150 minutes per week. They improved their eating, gave them more fiber, had them eat less fat, and lowered the glycemic load of their diets. Well, if lifestyle is such a strong intervention, what lifestyle changes do I need to make to avoid diabetes? Eat a whole plant food diet. You eat the entire food, you eat it unrefined. Whole wheat, not just the white part of it, the whole thing. Okay, test time. I want you to look at my screen here and tell me if the food I put up here is a whole plant food. All right, is that a whole plant food? Yeah, of salad, sure. How about this? No, it's a fish. Fish aren't plants. Okay, how about mushroom soup? Well, I don't even know what a mushroom is. Okay, how about grease in different packages and forms with different enticing labels? You're shaking your head no. Okay. All right. How about this? Well, yeah, it's mixed up, isn't it? It's got fruit and it's got juice. But right, yeah, the juice is not a whole plant food whole, but the fruit is. All right, nuts. Yeah. Cheese. No. Peas. Yeah. Meat. That's not a plant. Oats. Sure. Old-fashioned oats. Beans. Yeah. How about white biscuits? No. White spaghetti? No. How about brown spaghetti? Sure, you can get whole grain spaghetti. It's much better for you. How about corn? Corn on the cob. Sure, that's good stuff. How about corn chips? But wait a minute, it says whole corn, but then the next ingredient is corn oil. You know how many ears of corn it takes to make 1 teaspoon of oil? About 13. Is that a plant, whole plant food? No, it's not a plant. It came from a chicken. How about white tortillas? No. Brown tortillas? Yeah, you're getting the idea. Fruit? Yes. Milk? No. Okay. You figured out what a whole plant food was, and that's good. So now you get an A. If you go home and you practice it, you get an A+. Now here we're going to talk about eating more high fiber foods. Fiber is important. Fiber protects against constipation. Oh, who wants to die of constipation? And high cholesterol helps reduce cholesterol. Heart disease reduces heart disease. And it lowers blood sugar. In fact, a colleague of mine had a patient come to him who was diabetic as a result of being pregnant. We call it gestational diabetes. This lady did not want to take drugs. She did not want to take insulin. She didn't want anything to affect her baby. She wanted a normal baby, but she had diabetes. Well, what to do? She came to my colleague and said, well, let's try something. Let's have you take a half a cup of oat bran 3 times a day. Whoa, that's a lot of oat bran. So she went home. Oat bran cookies, oat bran muffins, oat bran bread, oat bran cereal, oat bran everything. But you know, she totally controlled her diabetes. Her blood sugar stayed normal. She didn't have to take pills or insulin. She delivered a normal child, and then her diabetes was gone. It helps reduce the risk of certain cancers, and it helps reduce obesity. Well, let's look at this for a minute. In the Women's Health Study out of Harvard, they discovered that if people ate higher fiber foods and lower glycemic index, they could reduce the risk of diabetes by 2.5 times. What about adding oat bran just to bread? A study where they compared white bread to white bread with oat bran discovered that adding the oat bran reduced blood sugars by 46% and insulin response by 19%. Just adding more oat bran. The last seminar I did over south of Boston, I did the diabetes talk at the beginning of the week. One of the gentlemen came to that. He said, okay, I'm going to start adding more oat bran. He came back at the end of the week and to report that his blood sugars were now pretty near normal and that he was very happy to find out how important fiber was. One source of fiber is whole grains. Whole grains are very healthy for that reason. Replacing refined grains, white bread, with whole grains can reduce the risk of diabetes by 70%. In fact, increasing the number of servings of whole grains in a day reduces the risk of diabetes by 50%. Now, there's other benefits to whole grains besides the fiber. It's not just the fiber is what I want to say. One of those benefits is the minerals. For example, chromium. Well, diabetics generally have no chromium in their tissue compared to other people. Well, what happened? Did they lose it when they were born? Or, well, here's the problem. If you are eating carbohydrates, refined carbohydrates that have no chromium in them, your body has to take from its own stores of chromium just to process the sugar, because sugar requires chromium to process. Well, that's a problem. It sure is. Well, where am I going to get my chromium? Well, 100% whole wheat has 8 times the chromium as white flour. Oh, okay. And brown rice has 4 times the chromium as white rice. So there's some good sources. Sometimes we even suggest the diabetic go and take a little chromium supplement. Oh, chew your food. Do I have to chew my food? Well, you have to choose food that requires chewing too. And in fact, when you chew food that requires chewing, it gives you an early insulin surge. That early insulin surge prepares for the intake of sugar, so when the sugar hits the bloodstream, it doesn't go too high. It also helps reduce food intake. How about breakfast? How important is breakfast? Oh, very important. In fact, people who eat breakfast eat less total calories for the day. They have lower cholesterols, and they have 50% lower risk of diabetes. All benefits. Now, I said that cells become hungry if you exercise. Remember that on the chart? And so the benefits of exercise include lowering your blood sugar and lowering your insulin for that matter, helps control weight, and improves mental outlook. Helps with that stress that increases the risk of diabetes. Here's a little study where they compared people who were sedentary to those who were active. People who were the most active saw a 46% reduction in their risk of diabetes. Activity is important. Activity predicts longevity. By the way, if you can't find time to exercise, you will have to find time to be sick. More people die for want of exercise than through over-fatigue. We rust out before we wear out. Exercise is important. Another important thing is losing weight. Remember we said the New England Journal of Medicine study that saw a 58% reduction in the risk of diabetes suggested people lose weight, 7% of their weight. Studies show that if we continuously lose weight, approaching ideal body weight, we can reduce the risk of diabetes by 30 to 50%. How about vitamin D? We know vitamin D is good for the bones, but it's also very important for diabetes. In fact, vitamin D deficiency increases the risk of diabetes. Vitamin D supplementation, on the other hand, has been shown to reduce the risk. But we'd like to suggest getting out in the sun to be the best way of getting your vitamin D. How about water? Here's a gentleman offering you a glass of water. I wish all my patients had somebody offering them a glass of water every day, maybe 10 times a day. Our wellness director decided to see what would happen if they put water in all the break rooms for the employees. As they put